One of the things I always make sure, I think it's an OCD problem, is like right people sitting on the right chair. I hope everybody is good today. Let's bring some energy after the nice lunch. Wake
Thank you,
people up.
guys.
So I'm going to talk a bit about BTC DeFi, talking about very quickly about the history of DeFi, the smart contracts, the programmability, interoperability, and chain abstraction. I'm joined by this fantastic panel, David 1, let's call you David 2, Aescobar and Kyle, some of the best people we have in our ecosystem at the moment, also very DeFi and technical oriented. So I would want to quickly start with an introduction of the panel first, and then I'll give my introduction. I think that's a bit more fair. Can we start with you, David, please?
Yeah. Hi, I'm David. I'm the CEO of Sig.Network. And at Sig.Network, what we do is we bring the ability for every single smart contract in every chain to hold private keys and use them. So the one you're most familiar with is chain signatures on NEAR, which we did this year. And next year, we're going to make it so Bitcoin can talk back and tell you what your balances are and whether a transaction landed. And then, in January, we're also going to make it so you can store Bitcoin in your Gnosis safe if you want to, or on Aave or Uniswap and all that kind of stuff. So really, really interesting stuff.
Great, exciting. Yeah, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Aescobar, obsolete of Satoshi protocol. We're basically running on top of near chain signature. We develop direct Bitcoin on-ramp, off-ramp from one to another chain. But basically, it's the core tech, everything was built on top of near.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle. I'm with the Stacks Asia Foundation. I'm our executive director. For those who may not be aware of Stacks, we're one of the original Bitcoin layers, and we're the very first to bring programmability and smart contracts to Bitcoin that help boom this entire world that we're talking about today around building on Bitcoin to Bitcoin Fi and its current iteration today. I'm also an advising partner to Bitcoin Frontier Fund and was recently one of the largest investors over the last 4 years in companies that were building on Bitcoin across the entire ecosystem as well.
Very interesting. David, please.
Thank you so much. Guys, it's my pleasure to see you. My name is David. I am the director of Global BD at the company called BitLayer. BitLayer is a full EVM compatible layer 2 built on Bitcoin. Currently, pretty much leading in terms of all the metrics. We've been live on mainnet starting from this year, from April 15th. This is when the mainnet started, and the ecosystem grew quite big. We have pretty much around 220 protocols live on mainnet. And guys, if you're interested in hearing about Bitcoin DeFi, we are the right people to talk to. Probably. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. As for me, I work with NEAR Foundation for almost 2 years now. I look after the integration of most of the applications, whether it's internal or external. And I work with most of the people here on the stage, making sure that things are available, they're performant, and the user experience is good as well as secure. So going back to, very quickly, touching back on the history of DeFi, we saw Bitcoin in 2009 getting launched. 5 or 6 years later, we saw Ethereum coming in with the programmability part of it. And then we saw the DeFi summer with Aave, MakerDAO, Uniswaps of the world, which completely changed the way DeFi, as we see it today, right? Going literally 100x or even more from there. Do you want to quickly share your experience or background with how did you get into DeFi and what really excites you into working on the DeFi space?
I can jump right in.
Yes,
what excites me most about DeFi is the ability to bring people who don't have access to sort of strong financial systems and assets, access those systems. So the ability to hold a currency that isn't going to devalue, that isn't controlled by one capricious or shady company, having the ability to swap assets around, and the ability to know it's going to work the same way today as it does in 10 years' time as it does today. So having that security in not just the asset, but the protocol you're using as well.
Right. Very noble.
My thoughts on DeFi. I think the biggest milestone on DeFi ecosystem is having Uniswap as the, I mean, they're the game changer at that time. And then everything just growing as fast as possible. Everyone just inspired by Uniswap at first place. Then Aave and all those stuff, it's just totally make everything possible when at first place people just thought about trading on CEX.
Right.
I think for me, I've been lucky enough to be in the DeFi area of this industry for some time and watch it through multiple eras and cycles. And having watched it evolve from the early days of Aave and Uniswap to where we are today has been super exciting. And for me, part of the reason why I got into DeFi, not only playing around, but also building and then later investing in it as well. And watching it now come to the Bitcoin side of the industry, I think it's very impactful to watch that 7-8 years of development, of trial and error, of lessons learned, to all of the on and off ramps that we saw, to now bringing this all back home to Bitcoin has been pretty fascinating to watch happen.
Right. How about you, David?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. Like, I think, ironically, not that much changed since the DeFi summer, because a big chunk of crypto is all about narratives, right? And those change every now and then. Like, you have DeFi, you have NFTs, you have other stuff, but the truth is that, like, in terms of utility, in cryptocurrencies in general, like, DeFi is still the biggest use case. And I think, like, everyone in this room uses some DeFi protocols to some extent, right? Because there are, like, a lot of things, like, just like I mentioned, NFTs, say meme coins and stuff like that, nothing wrong with that. It's, like, about speculation, like, for the most part. But whoever holds any cryptocurrencies here in this room, and it doesn't matter what it really is, X, Y, Z, whatever, basically, DeFi is still the king, because that's the way to actually put your assets into use. Yeah, and, like, if you think about it, like, the most groundbreaking things, apart from the infrastructure, actually happened in DeFi. Aescobar just mentioned that basically when Uniswap, V1, V2, whatever, when it got released, it was a groundbreaking thing. And whatever happens in cryptocurrency, whatever you can call groundbreaking, usually happens in DeFi, right? And you name it, like, everybody has, like, its own preferences. So obviously, like, Uniswap changed a lot. Then you had, like, GMXs. I know you had, like, Liquidity, for example. You name it. But, like, those are the protocols that can be used by people. Like, a lot of them, like, proved to be working historically. And yeah, I mean, like, if you are in cryptocurrency and if you are not into DeFi, and, you know, you can choose your own protocol, whatever tickles your fancy, then you're probably doing something wrong, because it's just, like, more effective way of actually putting your assets into use.
Yeah, that's true. And that also actually very briefly touches upon the point, like you said, DeFi is the most interesting use case because it brings a lot of incentives, right? Incentives as well as decentralization, like you mentioned, Aescobar, of finance, so to say. So I want to understand or learn from you, Kyle, and also from everyone else here, about interoperability, right? So we have had this Bitcoin, which was the decentralized finance. Then we got into the programmability part of it with smart contracts. And now we see a lot of BTC DeFi use cases coming out, because we also want people to pull out their Bitcoin from their wallets and start using it for different purpose. So what are your thoughts around it, and how is BitLayer in that case, or Satoshi, or Sig.Network, or Stacks doing around that in terms of bringing more users, better liquidity, or even more incentives?
Yeah, so a lot to that question. Maybe we'll take a quick step back and then we'll slingshot forward. So from a DeFi perspective on Bitcoin leading into operability, so we saw some very early traction around DeFi in Bitcoin back in 2021. All right, Stacks went mainnet. We had Lightning also pretty active at that time. So we saw a payments infrastructure. We saw the beginnings of DEXs, AMMs, swaps, wallets, this entire world that we had seen for years in Ethereum start to be introduced at scale on Bitcoin. And then fast forward, we started to see the next era of that spark around Ordinal's launch in January of 2023, which kind of launched us into this very big experimental era we've been in with building on Bitcoin, and that has opened up the next unlock, which was how the liquidity and users could start to migrate from one ecosystem to another.
Absolutely.
And how other ecosystems could leverage, and their applications, the stability and security of Bitcoin's core network. Now where we're headed, which Stacks and all of us are all playing a role in supporting, either from a liquidity side to a wallet and bridge side to the asset side, is now we're moving into the next era of where BTC, the asset, now has utility. And that is kind of this next big unlock with Bitcoin DeFi or BitFi that will open up the next wave of interoperability. The first wave, we'll say, was more around EVMs and Ethereum virtual machines, where you had a few networks that were native to Bitcoin, then you had those that were built off of Ethereum, EVMs, that opened up a very easy transition for users.
Right.
Now what we're starting to see is SVMs, so Solana virtual machines, Move, MVMs. We're seeing more interaction from the Near ecosystem as well. Now as we start to head into Bitcoin having utility with tokenized Bitcoin, we've got 20 plus assets that are either wrapped or native tokenized Bitcoin that are coming to market now that will allow users to bring their BTC that has sat dormant on the L1 into a layer, whether that's second or otherwise, and then into the application layer, and be able to do a lot of the DeFi we had seen in Ethereum to now even more in the near future that begins to unlock as we start to see this $1.5 trillion of an ecosystem become active. And from a numbers perspective, we go back almost year to date, December 2023, we had about $300 million of active TVL and user activity in Bitcoin. Today, actually numbers as of last week, so not counting this massive pump we just had, we have now over $4 billion in TVL. That's from restaking and also from liquid staking to general DeFi activities, NFTs, et cetera, and RWAs that has pushed this industry forward. That is before the unlock, where now you're going to be able to, again, take that BTC and move it. On the Stack side, we're doing that at scale with our asset called SBTC. We also have the pleasure of working with Near, Aptos, Solana, where we'll be bringing that asset across chain to allow for those additional ecosystems that may not yet be EVM to have Bitcoin in their ecosystem. Because at the end of the day, right now, there's 47 million active wallets with more than $1 of BTC in them today. That $1 plus wants to move. It wants to earn, it wants to yield, it wants to be engaged in a either simple, safe manner, or maybe a more risk-averse manner that allows them to do much more as well. And that's driving forward this big restaking and staking narrative that we saw a few panels about today as well.
Nice.
I think it's interesting to capture what Carl mentioned, like the role that Satoshi decided to play around this Bitcoin DeFi scene is how we can give a best user experience to bring their Bitcoin across all chains just through Near, which is through the chain signature. Like you can just easily, simply deploy your liquidity, your Bitcoin liquidity to any other D app directly with one single wallet. I think that's pretty interesting. Well, we know that not every user is smart enough to do every single little things, and a fragmented liquidity and all the liquidity in a wallet, you can see all chain being mentioned. It's pretty funny things as well. Then we want to tackle all of those things. So I agree with Carl on what's the narrative that we want to bring to the market. It's really important about how we want to grow the Bitcoin DeFi at the moment.
Absolutely.
I think right now we're living in the dark ages of interoperability, and the dark ages of interoperability specifically with Bitcoin. Bitcoin has the best name recognition of any token. My grandmother still thinks I work in Bitcoin.
Same, sorry.
It's completely bomb-proof. It's so bomb-proof that for the last 10 years, people have been trying to reset a testnet, and they're unable to because it just keeps surviving and moving. It is by far the best place for anyone to have an asset. And it's very aptly called digital gold, because much like gold, it sits there and does nothing. And what we're going to have in summer of next year, because right now we have chain signatures. And what chain signatures allows you to do is it allows you to have an abstract account that can bring all these sort of really amazing features, this sort of relatively interesting DeFi to Bitcoin. But what we're going to have next summer is we're going to have these chain keys everywhere, and we're going to have these chain keys on Bitcoin. What that means is I can put native Bitcoin on Ethereum, Solana, Base, wrap it in an ERC20 contract, and have people interact with that either directly or in such a way that they don't have to pay any fees. And I don't think we're going to be talking about specific, because right now if you want to do BTC DeFi, you have to live, breathe Bitcoin the whole time. That has to be all you care about. I think soon Bitcoin is going to be another token, but the token which has the best properties with which to store value. And the thing people use everywhere to do lots and lots of anything interesting with capital. So I think it's going to be the absolute linchpin of all DeFi by the end of next year.
Very well said. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a very good question, and I don't really know where to start. Let's talk about Bitcoin itself for a second. So, like, the asset has been around for quite a while, and we've been through, like, I'd say, like 3 iterations of the narrative, right? So, like, if you read Bitcoin's white paper, I mean, the premise that's in there was that Bitcoin was invented to serve the purpose of becoming like peer-to-peer digital cash. And now that's actually a topic that divides people because some people would argue that it actually fulfills this premise. Some people would argue that not exactly because of the adoption and stuff like that. So as the time passed, the narrative changed slightly and Bitcoin became a store of value. Right, and we know how it played out. I mean, quite well. So that was like the second iteration of the narrative, and the third iteration is actually making it a utility asset. So actually, I've been always a fan of Ethereum ecosystem. So like last year when I came across BitVM white paper, I mean the idea behind it just blew my mind. Because it's such a huge market. So much of an untapped potential, so much of a dormant capital, just like gentleman said. And imagine that you can actually put it to use. I mean, it's absolutely insane if you think about it. So the thing is that like when it comes to the current state of technology, like in L2s on Bitcoin, this is still a very, very new thing in most of the cases. So the current state of technology is not ideal because it's still so early. So we are talking about certain trust assumptions, like bridges, like being the biggest problem. But those issues are going to be solved sooner or later. And that's going to change everything, right? Because once we get rid of those trust assumptions, like this $1 trillion worth of market can be actually unlocked. Because right now, those people, let's say, who have been holding Bitcoin for God knows how long, they're being skeptical. And I completely understand that. So we are all like building those ecosystems together. And you name it, BitLayer, Stacks, built on Bitcoin, Merlin, whatever, like we are paving the way. And sometimes like I come across the guys from like different companies and like we make those jokes that, oh, like we are a competition, but actually if you think about it, the pie is so big that there's enough space for everyone. And just a closing thought about interoperability. Yeah, I mean, topics such as interoperability, account abstraction are going to be a really, really big thing in the future. The same goes to like most of the protocols that will go omni-chain like sooner or later. The thing, like DeFi world is evolving. So I see the future as everything goes multi-chain, right? There's like a free migration between chain X and chain Y. As it goes money goes where it's treated best, but it's all about adoption. So interoperability, liquidity, chain abstractions, those are key things. There are a lot of protocols building in this space right now, but we are not there yet. So it's all about adoption. It's all about making things easy and understandable.
Right, very good. I think we're running short of time. If I may borrow a couple of minutes, I would like to touch upon one last point. Okay, I take it as a yes. Thank you so much. So you touched upon bridges, you touched upon experiences of users and fragmentation, right? So very quickly, starting with you again, Kyle, would want to hear your inputs on chain abstraction and the experience or the information that you have about Near's chain abstraction and the possibilities with it in the DeFi space.
I think right now, back to a point David mentioned, we're kind of in the dark ages. I call it the experimental time. So we are in this experimental phase when it comes to Bitcoin, but also BitFi, and Near plays a very important role, not necessarily Near of the past, but Near of the future, and a lot of what chain abstraction is bringing, but then also the conversations we heard yesterday about AI and where that also may play in the future of DeFi as well. So I think it's got a big, exciting future ahead. Right now it's very experimental, and that's a good thing for us to learn how it's going to work going forward.
Right.
I can say it's interesting directions for Near. Especially chain abstraction has been around for Near for some times, since I think it's last year. We have talking about it, and then suddenly it's aligned with all the Bitcoin narrative at the same time. And we start from Bitcoin, and it provides more value to those ecosystem that has no smart contract. I think that will be very interesting to be continued, maybe with XRP, not sure. Yeah.
When we started doing chain abstraction stuff, it was originally called "No one gives a shit about your blockchain," and I think people just want to do stuff and they don't care about your blockchain, and I think therefore it's great.
True.
Yeah, just a closing thought. Basically, that's the point. That's the end game, right? It's like you want if you want to get more adoption in crypto, the end game, just like David mentioned, is that you are the user, you sit in front of a computer, you perform the transaction without even knowing which chain it actually is. We are getting better at it, but right now, it's difficult. I mean, really, for us, it seems to be so obvious because we've been around for quite a long time, but sometimes I think we take things for granted, and when it comes to people that never had anything to do with blockchain and stuff like that, this is complicated. I mean, it can appear to be easy, but really it's not. So yeah, the end game is just to make things simple, and once things are made simple, the adoption will come.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks for listening, everyone here.